Hello, this is Swanö. I'm from the band Edge of Sanity. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the song Tales from our first album, Nothing But Death Remains. That was originally released in 1991, but it's been re-released again by Century Media in 2024. Tales is in many ways a song that kind of set a new marker in the history of Edge of Sanity. We had kind of the early stages there with the demos and all that kind of stuff, and almost all the songs on the first album were re-recorded once before on a demo. But when it comes to Tales, it was a brand new song. And I must say that it doesn't really sound like it. I like the song, and it's one of my favorite songs on the album. But it felt a little bit like we were a bit stressed to produce one song that was previously unreleased to go on the album. And we were kind of putting all kinds of riffs together from our musical past. And there is a riff in there which is for the verses that I wrote in 1989 for my solo project Mortify. And I know that I mentioned it in the booklet for the compilation, when all is said, that it's the song Pray to the Force Unknown, but that's actually wrong, I found out. It's from another song from that same session, and the song is called Death Raider. Bruh, super evil. Yeah, but those songs were never really made available in these times. You know, I didn't really use it in tape trading or stuff like that. So it was kind of okay to steal ideas from other. And there's also another riff in there that I stole from another of my solo death metal projects. So maybe that's why, I mean, none of that had really happened in the demo stages with Edge of Sanity. We were always writing fresh, well, except for Immortal Souls, but I will tell you more about that later in another video. Yeah, in the demo days, it was very unusual for us to actually reuse any ideas from the past. It felt like Edge of Sanity should be a fresh start. And with Tales, it was more like, oh, do you have any bits that we can put together? And yeah, but in the end, it's with the intro and the little bit unusual beat. I know that was also a little bit like the first time we ever used this kind of beat. And I always refer to it as the King Diamond beat, or maybe even Merciful Fate beat. And it was kind of a new thing for us. We were always going more with other strange beats inspired by, you know, sometimes by Voivod or sometimes by other death metal bands, or also usual beats. But for Tales, it was also, yeah, it was a song that I felt like was maybe the first Edge of Sanity epic. And in my world, and also I guess the world from the other guys, this was a song that was supposed to be the last song on the album. Because somehow I grew up listening a lot to progressive rock, and I felt that the epic came very late on the album. And sometimes there was like an outro after it, like, you know, one of my favorite epics is the song Halloween by Helloween, and that was like almost at the very end of the album. And I kind of felt that is where the epics belong, you know, you do all the other stuff and then bam, come the epic. But in this specific case, our label boss decided that no, this track is the best on the album. It's so much more advanced than the other. It's like a progression. So this is now the first track. And we were all like, okay, if you say so. So Boss fixed with the tracking order. The original opening song was The Dead, and that was moved, I think, until the end of side A. And yeah, Tales was moved to the first, and yeah, the whole thing was shuffled around a bit. And in this process, where Boss alone went into the studio to reorganize the original mix DAT tape, yeah, he changed the sound. He added a lot of bass and a lot of treble, and he also added those infamous so-called dropouts, which made the sound on the album disappear a little bit, like 3 decibels, just like a short lowering in the volume and then back up again. I think for like 5 or 6 spots on the whole album. And yeah, you can imagine what it felt like when I actually had to buy the album in the local record shop Musikanten, because he didn't send us any copies before they were released, which I find a bit odd, but doesn't matter now. So I bought it. I went home on my lunch break and I think, wow, the cover looks completely different. This is not at all the cover that the bass player's father, Lennart Lindberg, had done. This looks all different. Now it looks like this guy is lying ice on the moon rather than in this more brown vibe that can be found on the flip side of the original LP release. This had more of a brown tone. There's also a picture of the original in the CD booklet from the reissue. And yeah, I put the needle on, and first of all I think, wow, fuck, the sound is strange. What's going on? It's all bass and treble. And then of course when the Human Aberration started, the second song, yeah, there you have, I think, 3 dropouts in one song. And I thought something is wrong with my stereo. What's going on here? This cannot happen. That, I mean, you can have dropouts on cassettes or whatever, but you don't have them on the first album you ever release in your life. And I remember calling Boss almost in tears. It's like, hey, what's going on with the album? It sounds super weird. The sound disappears and the blah, blah, blah. And I still remember the reply from Boss was like, oh, it's whoa, I don't know what happened, but maybe you could make it a part of your sound, or maybe you could make it your thing. And I was like, are you serious? I didn't tell him, of course. I was more like, but I thought, so you seriously think that we should have as a part of our sound that we have dropouts in our song, like the sound guy do the sound randomly down and up when we play live? That's pretty insane, but that was one of his answers. And yeah, rest in peace, Börje, but you did have a lot of strange ideas. But yeah, you were still a super amazing person. And I think if we would have ended up on another label than Black Mark, I don't even think I would be sitting here today talking to this camera, because he just let us do what we wanted to do. He did some weird stuff along the way, but what I heard from other labels that forced band to remix an album because they didn't like the sound of the hi-hat or whatever, I would not have been long on that label, or kept the band or the project that it later became alive so long if they would constantly have given us a hard time about stuff and having us do stuff all over. It was more like, I send him, this is the album, okay, we release it. And of course, after Nothing But Death Remains, Boss was not even allowed in the studio. He could come there and pay off the guest musicians or pay us for our place where we were staying, but then he had to leave because nope, we didn't want anything to happen like it did with the first album, that in the original mix didn't really sound anywhere near the way that I was hoping our first album would sound. But I had the possibility to have my sonic time machine, and I could go back and remix the album finally after all these years. But yeah, that's another episode on the Edge of Sanity TV. Woohoo!